In this video, we're going to be looking at the tactic of overworked pieces. So an overworked piece is a piece that is guarding against multiple immediate threats at the same time. Like maybe you're threatening to capture two different pieces and you have the same piece guarding against those two different attacks. Or maybe you're threatening a checking move or a checkmate, but that piece is also supposed to be guarding some other piece that you could capture. Well, it's overworked, can't do both things at once. We're going to take a look at several examples of this, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So one of Black's pieces is defending against a couple of serious threats in this case. It's supposed to be immediate threats. They're checking moves. There's a couple of checking moves that White could play, and either of these checking moves would be checkmate if it wasn't for this black piece. Think about the different checking moves that you can play here. There's only two checking moves here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, the lot is only two. The first is bishop to, let's see what that is. Yes, g6.
Bishop to g6. And what would happen if you played bishop to g6?
You know, the rook will just take.
Okay, well, see, this is part of what we have to do. You have to go into the position and imagine playing the moves and see what your opponent would do. And yes, the rook would certainly capture you. What other checking move do you see? What other checking moves do you see? So yeah, bishop to g6 is part of this puzzle. Definitely. You gotta watch out for this diagonal here. So the king is sitting on what is called the fool's diagonal. And it's the fool's diagonal if you move these two pawns and leave these squares open. So if your pawn structure is...
Yeah, I was just about to talk about that. Queen to h5, but okay. That's really terrible.
So what's the problem with queen to h5? I know
the same rook will take two.
Bingo. Exactly. So the problem here for Black is that the rook is overworked. He's guarding against a checkmate threat on g6, and he's guarding against a checkmate threat on d5 or on h5. So these two things are causing the rook to be overworked. So he's expected to guard against both of those threats. That's impossible. He's an overworked piece. So that's a huge flaw in Black's position. Now, the tricky part now is what we need to do. So you need to imagine playing both of these moves and think about how the position works out. Because one of these ways is a checkmate in two. So think about it carefully for a moment here. I'm going to go grab some coffee. I'm just going to go right over here. It's like, you know.
I thought of it.
Okay, so take your time. Take your time. So don't be lazy about it.
Thought of it.
So you gotta imagine the whole thing because you want to go through both. All right, you got mate in two? Go ahead.
Queen to h5.
Okay.
You have to take me.
Yeah.
If you don't take me, I'll just probably check. Because this is now checking the king.
They don't have another choice. I mean, they could block. So if you play queen takes h5, and they could move their rook to g6. Technically, that's the other move they could play. So they technically have two moves. They could take the queen, or they could block. Let's say they capture you, and then you play.
Second move is the important move.
And what is the second move?
B, bishop to g6.
Exactly. Very well played. A lot of students struggle to even imagine sacrificing their queen like this. So, well done. I've put this scenario before students many times, and they just can't even imagine that they would sacrifice their queen. But this is checkmate. And do watch out for, you really don't want your pawns to be ahead of what is called the fool's diagonal. So this diagonal here is the fool's diagonal. And if you're not castled, somewhere, your king's not safe, it's not a good idea to be pushing this F pawn, this G pawn up in front of this fool's diagonal. If you do, you are being foolish in doing that. So an overworked piece, it's not always like that one forced checkmate. This one's just going to be a win of material. So the queen is overworked here. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now. The queen is overworked. She's overworked because she's expected to guard this knight over here, which is under attack, as you can see by the bishop, and she's expected to guard the bishop as well. So she's basically overworked. Okay, White is asking too much from this queen, and so it's a flaw in the position. I've said often that we need to consider checks, we need to consider captures when we're evaluating a position. So think about these two different captures here. One way that you play it, you'll actually kind of lose material. But the other way, you're going to get two pieces for one.
So maybe it's gonna be bishop to c3.
Bishop takes c3. Yeah, so if bishop takes c3, very good. They basically have to capture.
Yeah.
Although normally you avoid trading material, so in some cases you would maybe not capture. But the trouble here is if they, because maybe they want to maintain defense of their bishop, right? But if they do something like this, say, to keep an eye on their bishop, then, well, the bishop captures here. The knight and the bishop are going after that pawn. So this pawn falls, and then Black has connected passed pawns that are going to be pretty powerful. Black should be able to push those up the board, and White would have to sacrifice actual pieces for those pawns. So pretty powerful. So in this case, even though you're not supposed to trade when you're down, Black or White, excuse me, really should take the bishop, and then of course we get this bishop, kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Not kind of, that was a 2-for-1 deal, straight up. All right, so we're trying to find an overworked piece. So White has a piece. Let's identify the overworked piece first. White has a piece that is guarding against a couple of different capturing moves at the same time. And yeah, it can't do that. It's overworked. So White is asking too much. So yeah, one of White's pieces is guarding against a couple different capturing moves. Can you find this piece?
Well, I see two. Actually, I see one. And that guy is the knight on c3.
Yeah, the knight on c3. Why is the knight on c3 overworked, Patrick?
Because the queen will take the queen, and the knight has to protect the queen, and the bishop can take the bishop, so the knight has to protect the bishop.
Exactly right. Okay. So that's kind of the easy part. I mean, it's not easy, but the easier part is identifying the overworked piece, as you've done. It is this knight on c3. Now, the tricky part is you have to imagine both scenarios fully. How do you play? Do you capture the bishop? Do you capture the queen? And be careful here, because you have to think about your opponent's best move and what they might do. You can't just decide on the move that your opponent is going to play. You have to consider all the checks, all the captures that your opponent can play, right?
Okay, sorry. Oh, a4, 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 a4.
Oh, so you're saying bishop captures a4?
Yeah.
No. So this is a puzzle a lot of students struggle on. We have to be more thorough. We have to be better at considering all the options that our opponent has. Okay, so if you take the bishop, everybody would like for the knight to capture the bishop back, but they don't have to play that. There's other captures that can be played. They can play queen takes queen. Okay, let's just play this out. Captures. Now, actually, Black is totally losing. Okay, obviously we're going to capture back here, get the queen, and now they take, and yeah, White now has 2 knights. Black only has 1. This pawn here is horrible. It's going to fall. It's a backward pawn. White is totally controlling that square. They can bring their rooks to bear, doubling up, and there's nothing that can be done to save that pawn. It eventually will fall, which means that one will eventually fall as well. And that's, yeah. With a piece advantage, if if Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, was playing black, I would beat him in this position as white. So that you have to be really careful. You have to imagine how the pawn structure is going to look after you do the trades. And you have to consider all checks and all captures that your opponent can play. You can't just cherry pick.
Okay. I made my final decision.
Okay.
Whatever I do, I'm gonna let my queen fall.
So what are you going to play?
I'm gonna let my queen take the white. I'm gonna let the queen take the queen.
Yeah, so you're just trading queens, which, you know, it's hard to do. I love the ladies. You know, the queens are my favorite piece. But, you know, you traded queens plus you get the bishop for free. And actually, so white was winning this position, and now black, you know, it's pretty even, actually. Okay, well, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe, as I will be posting many videos each week that you can find out about. So, yeah, thank you for joining me.